All right.
Greetings, dear ones.
Yes, hello, dear.
May the peace of the Great Spirit be with you always.
So let us begin with the discussion. The first time I ever talked to Tobias was on an airplane in 1997, and I wasn't particularly spiritual or metaphysical. I was in the business world at the time, and Tobias came in on this plane flight and started talking, and hasn't stopped since. But initially, it was just me talking to Tobias. I hadn't even told Linda about it.
And how long did it take you before you broke it to Linda? That this
It was about a year.
So you kept it to yourself for a year?
Yeah.
I received what felt like, what I experienced to be a telepathic contact from Bashar and his people. In that moment of the telepathic contact, a memory actually came back of having made an agreement somewhere prior to this life to do this.
I grew up in a Roman Catholic family of Sicilian immigrants. Most of them, even today, after I've been channeling Joseph for 15 years, don't know what I do. They have some idea, because I don't talk about it to them, and they don't ask me. They know I do something weird.
I was very lucky. I had a lot of support. My friends were very accepting. And that's one thing that I've always been really open about. I didn't really hide it, even from employers, you know. And I've always felt it was really important for me to be honest about that, because I saw how it impacted people.
I started in a class where we were really studying making a bridge, an intrapsychic bridge to other sources of intelligence. And so it started in the context of that class.
See, I thought that all of these esoteric things were for older women over 40, and it would have nothing to do with men. So I was dragged to these two guys who channeled for me, and there was something, this was 3 years apart, they both told me the same thing. And that is when I had to start looking at how could guys 20 years apart in age, 3 years apart in ID, who never knew each other, give me information that was identical. And the information just happened to be that there was a master named Cryon who I was supposed to get a hold of.
An arrangement, so to speak, was made prior to the physical life of the channel within what you would call the oversoul of the channel, of which I am also a part. We are part of the same soul. You might refer to me as the channel's future self, and incarnationally speaking, I would look at the channel as my past self, just to put it in linear terms.
We are not happy with the way that things exist currently in our reality. All right? We are from what you would perceive to be the future. And we have come back to our past so that we may learn, all right, and so that we may assist the planet, because what's going on now is going to impact the entire universe.
Well, we would prefer that you ask us, if you like. There's nothing in particular we would like to say, except that we're here, and it's very, very pleasant to be here. It's a delight. It's part of sharing, with the big S, if you might say. The archetype of sharing is something we enjoy embodying.
I've had many, many lifetimes on Earth. I have deep love and compassion for humans because I remember what it was like to go through the things that humans are going through now. I remember the challenge in particular, the challenge of knowing at some deep level that you are a spiritual being.
Our goal is simply to help people live a more joyful, abundant life. And whatever it takes to achieve that, we're willing to do. So that, in a nutshell, if you will, is our work.
You sit in the energy of a great shift. Many of you are feeling it. Maybe that's why you're watching this now. Maybe there's something that's happened in your life that would allow you for a moment just to open your mind and look inside something you always thought was untenable before, only reserved for those on the lunatic fringe before. Here you find instead wisdom pouring out. Perhaps you'll even feel the love of God pouring out.
There's a lot of things that are being transmuted and altered at this time. All right? You're finding some things out about some of your religious leaders. You're finding some things out about religion that just isn't holding true to you. It's not ringing true to you anymore.
Well, we want to tell you this, is that there is so much here that is hiding. But you must feel it. There has been such a shift in these last years, especially in the last 20 or so.
You're remembering who and what you are, and it doesn't need an intermediary.
This changeover from the old religious system that so many of you are familiar with is difficult, very difficult, because it holds on tightly. Those who have such a strong concept of God as some higher authority and is the only creator, they want to hang on to that dearly. They fear letting God go, their old God, you see, because they are so out of touch with themselves they can't possibly even contemplate what it's like to have to go inside.
Since so many humans are still part of traditional religion, we realize it's hard for them to accept this concept and for them to absorb it and assimilate it.
There are mavericks out there. There are those who are going outside of the grid. There are those who are taking huge leaps of consciousness within themselves. They're looking inside for the answers rather than letting somebody outside do it for them. They are breaking this pull, this type of magnetism from mass consciousness and going off on their own.
How many aware people on the planet is it going to take that are able to put their awareness into their speech and into their actions before the collective consensus is affected? And that is yet to be determined. No one knows exactly when and how that'll happen.
They are going to be the examples to other humans that you can cross the chasm of old consciousness to new, that you can integrate the human and the divine right here, right now. You don't have to wait till you die to do it. You don't have to wait till your next incarnation. You can do it right here.
You will see within the next 10 and 20 years a change in verbiage as people are able to articulate more about self-responsibility. You're already seeing that. As people are able to articulate more about other levels of consciousness, the higher consciousness, you're already seeing more of that. People talk about it, my higher self, my higher consciousness. And then behaving from that level of integrity is what you will begin to see as well.
Children have always generally had that capacity, and they get learned out of it, shall we say, taught out of it. Generally by the age of 3, definitely by the age of 7 in your reality. But now not so much anymore. They are coming through with what you call core fortification.
Because you needed that fresh energy coming to the planet. All right, you needed new ways of thinking and new ways of perceiving.
They are less prone to absorb the telepathic onslaught of negative belief systems from the rest of society. They simply won't participate in those beliefs.
So that's why they are in part your greatest teachers, because they're already ahead of the game in some ways.
You're actually seeing children who will have a different attitude than any children have had before. That is understandable in an evolved species. You are asking whether you, as an older human being, can change, and the answer is absolutely a yes, for you could become childlike.
The wisest you have ever been as human beings is when you were little children. They are just so uninhibited and joyful, and they live in the present moment with joy. They're not thinking about what's going to happen 10 years from now or even 10 minutes from now. They're living in the present moment with joy, and that is the key. You should all be like little children again. That's the best advice we could ever give to anybody.
There's a new wave of channeling that's starting to reemerge with the advent of the public awareness of quantum physics. Not that everyone's a quantum physicist, but that has opened people up to realizing that consciousness is so far beyond us, and we can align with non-physical consciousness.
I receive these blocks of energy, and I can receive a block in half a second, and it'll take me 15, 20, 30 minutes to put it into words.
I have found over the years it gets clearer and clearer. There was a time when my channeling, the kind of channeling I do, was very different. I used to get information, wait, and regurgitate it. Now it's real time, and I feel it in real time in a trance-like state.
The human brain operates on a certain frequency rate, and in channeling, in the altered state, it changes frequency rates. And it becomes something that might be closer in frequency to their reality, which might exist on a higher level. At the same time, he's kind of doing the same thing, altering his frequency, his brain frequency, so that somewhere in the middle, the frequencies sort of meet and lock and become synchronized. And so what you're kind of getting in a channeling, as I understand it, is he's not really speaking a language. He's just sending thoughts. It's getting translated through my body into the language I was raised to understand, which in this case is English.
The changes in my life have been such an astonishing difference between who I used to be, my personality. Let me tell you, I didn't used to like groups. I didn't like people. I chose to be an engineer in a sound booth, so I would not have to deal with people. It's a good call. I can push a button and hear them or not, and then release it or hear them or not. I had full control over my social life. I liked one person at a time, usually a woman, and so that would be my life. I was not a well-read. I was not an orator. I wasn't an in front of the camera guy. No, it isn't me. I know that it isn't me, and I'm doing my best to be a purest vessel as I can for what it is.
It's the most comfortable thing I've ever done in my life. Now that I've gotten used to it, it took me about 10 years to get used to it, right. but it's my life's work.
There was a misunderstanding about the law of attraction. The human, the limited human, uses it like this. I want a new car. And they expect it to come to them. Well, it will, but it will probably hit them and send them flying. A limited human says, I need $1,000. I have to be able to pay my rent. Where it is becoming distorted right now is that it is turning into a mental exercise. Somebody out there wants to write a book, hundreds of pages, outlining it. And then the moment the human starts to read that book, they go mental, and then it shuts down, you see. The mind can only go so far. The law of attraction is your spirit, your soul. It is the deepest parts of you. It's not what the brain can conjure up.
We understand that money is one of the symbols of abundance on your planet, and that's all well and good. You can have as much money as you want. But the idea really is to relax the definition that it has to come that way, because then you open the doors through which abundance could come in all the other forms in which abundance could come, to simply allow you to do what you need to do when you need to do it. Sometimes that can actually just be being gifted something. That's still a form of abundance when someone gives you a gift. Because you're creating a reality that has an open door to accept the idea that you can be given something effortlessly without having to go through any specific machinations to make it happen.
Society will tell you that you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve a particular result, and we'll tell you that's not true. What has to be is that your vibrational state has to be in alignment.
The idea is to also examine the belief systems where you might be resistance to the idea of abundance, because many of you have belief systems unconsciously that actually keep the idea of the experience of abundance at bay.
The person is conditioned for some degree of abundance or non-abundance, depending on the pre-existing conditions with the parents growing up. And so conditioning is the first place to look.
For example, you are raised on your planet with all sorts of contradictory and conflicting belief systems about money, such as love of money is the root of all evil. You will never be a success unless you have a lot of money. How do you allow those two things to coexist side by side without being confused?
Because the conditioning will determine what the belief systems are and what the subconscious is holding on to. And if there's limitations there, then you want to heal whatever that misconception is, because all humans are deserving, innately, inherently deserving. It's just a matter of recognizing it, owning it, understanding it, and believing it.
Many people who believe, well, I will never be successful if I don't have a lot of money, but also believe that I will become a greedy person, a bad person, if I only get a lot of money, may never allow themselves to become physically wealthy, because it is more important to them to be a good person than to be a bad one. So if they associate the idea of being a bad person with having a lot of money, then that's a belief they need to look at, because they don't have to have that association. The idea is not that you have to become more abundant than you are. The idea is to get in touch with what you are saying you are abundant in. And if you're abundant on lack, you will experience an abundance of lack.
You have a conflict going on now between the limited human and the souled being. The soul doesn't really necessarily care about all of the human whinings. None of it matters. It doesn't matter if you didn't pay your rent. It doesn't matter if you were a multimillionaire. None of it matters. Those are things of concern to the human aspect only. What the soul cares about, what your spirit cares about, is consciousness, which means awareness. Your soul and your spirit cares about the joy of being. The joy of being. In other words, experiencing what is in front of you to experience.
We will tell you thought creates form, alright, but your emotional state vibrates into being. So whatever you are putting out emotionally, you're going to get back energetically. And because the physical reality is reflecting the emotional, if there are lower frequencies that you are putting out, then what you're getting back in the physical realm are the lower frequencies.
The soul would rather have a bad experience for you than no experience at all. You see, those humans who try to run from experiencing things and doing things and creating things, they're really frustrating their own soul.
Whatever vibration you give off, whatever frequency you create or generate, determines utterly and absolutely whatever experience is reflected back to you from your reality. Because physical reality really does not empirically exist apart from your definition of it. Even your own quantum physicists are beginning to discover this. So physical reality is likened to a mirror.
It's not going to say, well, Johnny's been a good boy today, so we're going to reward him, or Susie's been a bad girl today, so we're going to punish her. It's very impersonal. It has nothing to do with the traditional concepts of a punishing or judgmental God.
So whatever it is that you give off, whatever form you give yourself, however you define and identify yourself, is what is reflected back to you from your reality, so that you can decide whether you wish to retain that idea and that frequency or whether you wish to change it.
You create your realities. Every bit of your realities, from birth to death, and everything in between.
The vast, vast majority, unfortunately, majority of humans spend their valuable and precious creative energies chasing after the little things.
From our perspective, the most effective way to alter your reality is to get in touch with, consciously, the beliefs that have created the reality you are experiencing so far. To find out what that belief is, to identify it and define it, will give you conscious recognition of what has been generating your reality. Once you have defined the belief, you can then understand as a mechanism how it has been generating the frequency that's caused the reflection you've been experiencing. And once you define it and recognize that as the mechanism, you can then replace it with a belief that you prefer. And you can also then believe, if you wish, that that new belief will replace the old one just as effectively and create reality just as effectively as the old belief did. But once you replace the belief, and thus then it generates new emotions, new thoughts, and new behaviors, you will then get a new reality that is reflective of those ideas.
When your life changes like that, don't be surprised at the changes. That's one thing that always amazes the angelic beings that I work with. A human asks for change, and then their life starts changing, and then they, freak out, because they lose their job, and they lose their family, and they lose all that old baggage they've been carrying around. And they go into fear. But understand that as the changes begin, there's an evolution of energy. It is a cleaning house, getting rid of the old to make way for the new you.
We always say it's a bit like, placing your order with the universe, if you will. You climb the stairs to the rooftop of the building, and you throw your boomerang out to the universe. That's your order. Alright? And so you've taken yourself to a frequency level up here. So you place your order, and then you start to worry about it. It hasn't come back yet. I must not deserve it. I'm not going to get it. So you drop yourself out. You go down a couple floors. Well, the order comes back, and you're not standing on the roof anymore. Alright? You've dropped out of the frequency range that exists in. So you've got to keep yourself the same rate at which you are placing an order.
It seems like you're saying that it's almost a choice, like setting goals or something like that.
No goals. That is so mental. That is so, what do you say in your expression? So yesterday. So 80s, Calder is telling us. Forget the goals. It is an exercise in frustration, in futility. You, a sovereign being, don't need goals. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because you attract everything to you.
Certainly, it's never beneficial to anyone to do anything that does not feel good to them. And so many humans are doing things that don't feel good to them. And the perfect example of that is people are often in jobs they hate. They're doing the work for the money, not because they love it. So anytime you're doing anything that does not feel good to you or that does not resonate with you, you're doing yourself a great disservice. And you're distancing yourself more and more from your higher self.
When you make choices, you literally re-energize yourself. Think of yourself as a type of magnet or an attracting type of energy. When you make choices in your life, you attract all of the energies to you. We say to humans that all energy is there to serve you. It seeks to serve you. And the Master allows energy to serve them.
God is not this divine being who sits up there somewhere in the clouds on a throne and dictates to you what your life should be. God does not judge or criticize. God is not a single entity like that. It's the divine energy that permeates everything.
We understand that the term God may have many different interpretations on your planet. It is simply a generalization to make it easy to understand the concept that we are discussing.
But that word holds many connotations, and unfortunately many negative ones for this planet because of how you've been conditioned with religion. Right? You've been sold a lot of lies. Right? But there's also a lot of truth in there. And you know, if you want people to believe something that you're selling, and it's not the truth, you're going to sprinkle it with the truth. Because if you told someone a bold-faced lie, guess what? They know you're lying.
People project humanity onto God, yes. And the religions have done this as a way to help people conceive God. And it certainly makes sense. If you've got to have something to sink your teeth into, something to imagine as an image of God, then you need a religion, quote unquote, an organization, a codification of what God is into a personification. And in history, that's what's happened. People have had to project some form of personification onto all that is in order to conceptualize it.
As you come into this era of I am, it is also discovering that this God that humans have been seeking for the last 10,000 years doesn't exist out in heaven somewhere, isn't hidden somewhere. It is right here. It has always been there.
There's a shift. We would suggest someone saying there's a new myth of God. A new myth of God arising at this time. And that is a very exciting prospect, to take the idea of God into a larger context of God, goddess. All that is, that God is not simply a masculine image per se, but is a principle that is both masculine, feminine, and the synergy of both.
Everything that exists, even that rocky hillside outside your window there, everything that exists has a divine aspect. It is part of what you call God or goddess.
And you don't like that. The viewers don't like that. The watchers don't like that, for they wish to put God on a pedestal. And they want to say all good things come from God, and they are taught they are nothing from birth. And it's not that way.
We define love as the choice to see the divinity in all beings, not just human beings, not just spirit beings, but in all beings, all that is.
Often we will use all that is, because that's what the infinite is, the one is. By definition, it is all that is. There is no outside to it. There cannot be an outside to it.
That is, in our view, what God is. And so you are, literally, you are all God. You're all goddess. And you have the power that goes along with being divine, even though you don't think you do most of the time.
Magnificent, all of you. My definition of God are the ones I sit in front of. You want God to be one thing, for you in 3D. You want to worship God, for you in 3D. And I tell you this, that the day that you start suppressing what you've been told and opening the door to what God really is, in will come God, and it'll have your face on it.
What do you say to people who really do not feel empowered?
We would suggest that if people are not feeling empowered, the first thing we do is remind them that they are telling themselves some lies. Yes. When people say, I know I'm powerless, or I'm feeling powerless, we say, that's a story you're telling yourself. That's a story you're telling yourself based on fear.
I'm going to simplify this for you, and perhaps some may think the answer is a bit terse, but just get over it. You're wallowing in your own self-pity. You have set up an energy of being a victim of life, a victim of other people. You're allowing them to steal your energy and to steal your heart and your consciousness. You're in a type of trap, and you're letting it happen. You decide one day when you get out of bed, or one night when you're taking a walk, that you're just going to get over it. You're going to stop letting others take from you. And you're going to stop taking from other people as well. You're going to be whole and sovereign. And it is truly that simple. You know what makes it complex and makes it difficult for humans is they develop all these multi-step programs. And they write books. And they have seminars and classes. And they get more and more and more into the mind and away from the true matter at hand. You are an angelic being. You are God also. Get over all the rest of it.
Human beings want to compartmentalize everything. They want to know the steps of ascension. They want to know itemization by itemization what things they must do in order to please God. Never understanding that if they are pieces of God themselves, that there is a switch inside that is all ready to go. That switch, known very well in spirituality all over the planet, is the one that gives you permission for the epiphany, for the enlightenment to begin to pour in, for answers. It is slow, and you must unlearn what you have taught. But it is true. Any human can. Any human can, no matter what the situation, no matter where they are or who they are.
In this so-called New Age or Age of Awakening or Age of Spiritual Awareness on your planet, the whole idea is that you are really at the end of the cycle of limitation that you have imposed upon yourself for thousands of years. And you're awakening into the remembrance that you don't have to do it that way.
There's only one question that you should ask. It's the fast track, as they say, to spirituality. It is the fast track, as they say, to getting whatever it is that you have come for. Human beings who would be watching this now, whatever is before you and whatever challenges are there, the fast track to all of that is to get into a meditative state with pure intent and say to God, to Spirit, I love you. I know you are there. Show me what it is I need to know. And don't expect an answer to fall upon you in a physical way, but instead expect that you have connected to what seems to be the chaos of the system of the universe. Connected in such a way that the synchronicity will begin to appear in your lives like little open doors here and there to guide you to the places that will answer the questions that you would have had otherwise.
There are no victims. There are absolutely no victims.
There are only willing participants. Alright? There are no victims. So you can create your reality. Alright? You can unplug from mass consciousness and create a separate reality. You are an immortal being who has chosen to project itself into this game.
You're a sovereign, self-sustaining being.
You're powerful creators. You create everything you've ever experienced. And the only alternative to that is to make yourself a victim of fate or whatever, of my mother and father's mistreatment of me or whatever. Now we realize people don't want to die of some painful illness or in a car accident or whatever, but nothing happens to you. Every death, we have said several times over the years, every death is really a suicide because nothing can happen to you vibrationally that you're not a party to, if you will. In other words, if you're constantly afraid of dying in a car accident, you're probably going to die in a car accident. If you're constantly believing that your body, no matter what its condition, healthy or unhealthy, has the resources to bring itself back to a state of perfect health, then you're going to achieve that state of perfect health.
So, if someone gets cancer,
yes,
they want to put themselves through that experience at some level?
It isn't that the physical personality necessarily wants to have that experience, but it may be part and parcel of belief systems that have been bought into and ideas and definitions that have been bought into that allow you to experience the idea that you are a victim of something or out of control. But the idea is to learn through that you're not, and that you actually can create something else, that you actually can transmute that idea, that experience, into something else, or learn from it in a positive way. And the thing to also remember is that regardless of what happens to the physical personality, the spirit, the being, the consciousness is eternal and infinite, and has the capability of experiencing a number of things. And even though it may experience, for a time, the idea of something that causes it pain and suffering, it is a temporary experience that the soul can nevertheless use to its benefit.
You know, pain serves its purpose. It is a catalyst for change, because if you were happy and content all the time, you probably wouldn't move, would you?
Probably not.
No. So it serves as a catalyst, and we will tell you pain is perception, nothing more.
I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that, again, this pain must be experienced. I am simply saying that it is part and parcel of the definition of the reality that you have decided to experience, the physical time-space reality. Such things are possible in that experience. But the idea is to learn through that experience that you actually don't have to suffer, that you can remember you are creating your life, and you don't have to be the victim of belief systems or definitions that say you are out of control.
The basis of your existence is freedom. You all have free will. So you're free, and we realize many people would disagree with us, and many don't see it like this, but you're all free to do whatever you want. You're all free to be whatever you want. You're all free to have whatever you want.
There are no victims here. There are only willing participants. So when you are allowing others to subjugate you, the moment you stop, you see that you have power. So the whole thing was set up. This reality is showing you that you have power.
Even though many of you choose to shackle yourselves and to curtail your freedoms, that is a choice too. But you are free.
About 15 years ago, I started having some visions, and I didn't know what they were. So I started doing some research on past lives, and I came across channeling. And it was the early 90s, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anybody who did it, and I just knew it was something I was supposed to be doing. So I found a couple books and did some of the exercises and had really visceral responses, but nothing really happened. I was trying to channel verbally, and my limbs would tingle and my eyes would water. And so I would try it periodically and kind of put it aside and come back to it, and took a meditation class and did some other things and did some work on myself. And about a year after I started trying, I sat down one day and just knew I was supposed to have a pencil and paper, and started to do automatic writing. And it's kind of developed over the years.
What really started me on the path of channeling was reading the book Opening to Channel by Sunea Roman and Dwayne Packer. I've read the book several times and followed their procedures, and the end result of that was the spirit guide came to me. She appeared to me as an American Indian woman, and her name was Tamara. And so I channeled her for a few years. I was aware, sort of on the periphery of my awareness, this male Indian. I didn't know who he was, or I didn't know if it was real, or if it was my imagination, or where it was coming from. I didn't really trust myself as a channel then. And so it was kind of a scary process for me in the beginning, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. But I knew there was something there that was beyond me.
Well, I have several families, as many of us do, and I have more than one marriage. The wife that I have now, I was introduced to in the recording studio. And I was on my third Cryon book at the time. And so we dated for a long time. before I ever opened my mouth of what I was doing. And I remember the day when we were going to go have spaghetti, and we never made it to the spaghetti place because I brought my books. I said, it's now or never, she's got to know, because I felt my heart, what was going on, and I said, I've got to, it's either make it or break it right now. So I brought my books to her house, and we never got out of there, because she actually said, she took it all in, and she said, I'm going to have to think about it. She read the books and called me up, and she says, this is everything I've always believed. Wow. So we had a good meeting and melding at that time.
At a certain point, she actually said, well, she'd like to hear, what Tobias has to say. So we sat down here in the living room and did our first channel with Tobias talking. And at a certain point, I started working with a psychologist who had some tough clients, difficult issues. And it would be the psychologist, myself, and of course Tobias. And I really enjoyed that. It was dealing one-on-one in a very intense way. But then as word about that got out, then people wanted to do it in a group.
You, the psychologist, Tobias, and a client.
And a client, right. And at some point, we literally started here in our living room at home, and just a small group of about a dozen people. And it's now grown into what it is.
I worked with psychologist Dr. Margot Chandley, and she would work with me to help me practice going into trance and let the entities talk, and it felt very natural to me all the way along, because I was always having the reassurance from my telepathic connection with my unseen friends that everything was going along as scheduled. And then I would get updates and recommendations and from them and things I could do to prepare, and it all felt really, really comfortable and very, very aligned. Mm-hmm. Very, very nice. Plus I had this wonderful psychologist that I could talk with about it and debrief about it, so I never felt odd or unusual. I know that some people have had it be very strange and unsettling, and it was never that way for me at all.
I was actually introduced to a channel who was, doing public sessions at the time. And I went and I listened to the entity coming through that channel for several months and thought that the information had value. It was interesting, seemed to be helpful to people who were asking questions of the entity. But at one point during listening to that entity, they actually offered to teach a class on channeling. And I went into the class not because I wanted to become a channel. That was the farthest thing from my mind. I just wanted to further my research. I wanted to see how something like channeling could be taught, because I didn't understand that could be done. Under one of the guided meditations that the entity was giving, I received what felt like, what I experienced to be a telepathic contact. I decided, well, whether it's really another entity or whether it's just a portion of my consciousness, what I did understand is that channeling itself is an actual altered state. And in that altered state, people have the ability to access information that they might not otherwise be able to in their normal daily waking state. And so in knowing that information might be able to give people a different perspective on their lives, might be able to help them make the kind of changes that they wanted in their lives constructively, I decided that was reason enough to go ahead and experiment and see how far the channeling would go.